above the horizon line. You start too big, you run out of room really fast. So this thing starts just like 2-point perspective. I guess it skips in my ruler. So it looks exactly like 2-point perspective. And right away, now that we're working, this one's not difficult, but now that we're starting to work on more intricate designs and expecting more detail, really make a habit of just erasing as you go whatever you don't need, and it makes life a lot simpler later on. Keep your drawings light. I'm drawing dark, and it always comes back to haunt me on these things. Now, just like 2-point perspective so far, but we have 1, 2, and we need a third vanishing point. Just for this practice, I always put it straight down from the corner. You could move it over side to side. Things get really wonky looking. It's kind of fun, but if that's something you want to play around with on your own time, that's cool. But for here, I'm just going to work here. If you have it real close, you're going to have a real sharp angle to the building. So you're still going to have a similar angle, but you'll have a little bit more space to work with. So I'm going to go down low and try to make it fairly even. And that's what that first building will look like. And then you can leave space if you want. You could have them right up against each other, but I think the space is nice. I'm going to make this one a lot taller. And you can see with the 3-point, you do run out of space a lot quicker because the buildings take up more room. Just by virtue of those angles. And I'll do the same thing over here. A little smaller space, maybe taller building. And again, the taller you go, the steeper that angle gets. That is a rough ruler. I'm going to make this a little narrower. And it's hiding nicely behind the other buildings. And then you can go and erase stuff you don't need. Usual. And then of course all your doors and windows would follow suit. Whatever you put on there, sometimes people will put everything vertical. And in that case that one works because of the nature of the building. But if you did it here, you can see it does not work well, unless you're doing like a Tim Burton style, and if you don't know who that is, you have to look them up. Tim Burton style drawing, then it might look okay. Now, one thing I do like to do is to make this one, this being the focal point kind of, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna move this building forward, and all you have to do is drop these lines a bit, and you can drop them as far as you want, depending on how far forward you want that building to look. And then just reconnect your vanishing point. You can probably do the same thing in 2-point perspective. And now that breaks up that kind of consistency of where the plane that the buildings are all sitting on, brings that one forward quite a bit. and just adds a little bit more interest to the drawing. So that's something you can play around with as well. And you can even try it in 2-point perspective if you want. Now, don't confuse 3-point, which this is, with multi-point perspective. And we're gonna talk a little bit about that. We'll actually use that a little bit next term in a mechanical drawing. Multi-point would be where you've got this building working off one set of vanishing points, and then this building might be working off another set of vanishing points. And it can turn into a jumbled mess, but there are uses for it. And again, it's not something we're gonna use a lot of, but it does come into play, like I said, when we do a mechanical drawing next semester. So that's your real quick and basic rundown on 3-point perspective. And definitely explore it a little bit. It is fun to do, and you can definitely do it from the top view as well. You could have your vanishing point up here and end up having your buildings looking kind of the opposite direction. So you'd have the top of the building and you'd be looking down, which might look really weird, depends on how you do it, but you can do it both ways. I do like the look of this though. So, moving on to the important part, the interior. Same thing, put your horizon line fairly high on the page. Around the top third is good. Vanishing points, don't lose your vanishing points. And again, you don't have to work off center, you can work one way or the other if you want. But I like center because it, as much as I'm not a real fan of symmetrical stuff, I like a little asymmetry and things. Working off the center gives you the most space on both sides of that corner. So now, just like with 2-point, the exterior parts of 2-point perspective, we're connecting to the vanishing points, but we're running the opposite direction. So kind of like we did in 1-point when we did the interior. You're creating an inside of a box. So now we're running, instead of running from the line to the vanishing point, we're running away from it. You probably could go even a little closer to the top, because the ceiling in this case isn't important. But it's nice to have a little ceiling. So now we've got what feels like looking into a corner of a room. And depending where you place this, it kind of affects the view you get. So usually when I do them, where'd my sample go? This one's not bad. That one's fairly generic, like you're just standing in the corner, Blair Witch style, looking into the room. This one, it's like I'm standing on a box or something, looking a bit down a little bit more. And of course, this table's a little bit closer. And this one, when I was working this one, you can see here I put the X because I screwed up on the couch. I didn't leave enough room. This should have been over further so I could have enough room to fully construct that couch without only having a little bit here. So think ahead a little bit when you're doing your planning. Make sure that when you draw your furniture that you're going to have enough room to create the thing kind of semi-realistically. And again, just like usual, I like to do the floor first. It's your choice if you want to do it first or do it after you already construct your furniture. I just like to do it first and then erase. But because I draw dark, it makes for a mess. So you do have to choose wisely. Now, for the spacing of the tiles, in this case, you can measure both sides. In the video, I do it both ways. I measure both sides, and I use the spacing system, and they come out exactly the same. So, it's actually just easier, in this case, to measure. I'm using 1/2 inch. You can use a centimeter or 1/2 inch, whatever you're comfortable with. But you can use any size you want. I'd be careful about making them too big, because it can look a little bit odd. Now, they do say a bigger tile in a room makes the room look bigger, so it's kind of an optical illusion. So I've got my points. I'm gonna go back to my vanishing point and just start connecting. And what I'm gonna do, this is another way you can put that wonky line. Don't use shitty rulers. I'm gonna skip one. And this, you can definitely do this if you want, if you're showing a fair bit of tile and just a small little like area rug or a mat, you can definitely play around with your tile design a little bit. I'm drawing on my projector. And you can see what starts happening as you get closer and closer to that vanishing point. Things start to get a wee bit strange. Now I'm gonna do the same thing on this side, and I'm gonna do the same. I'm gonna skip, I'm gonna do 2. Sure I'm on the right spot here. And then I'm gonna skip 1 and move to the next one. Ruler's not cooperative in any way. Better edge to it. And now you can see we ended up with a bigger tile there. And you could go along and erase there as well. And you could just do that. You could just create all the tiles and then decide that you want a couple spots where there's bigger tiles. So you could do something like that. To me, it looks very kitchen or bathroomy, but you can do a kitchen if you want. You can do a bathroom. Toilets are tough to construct. You have to make sure you get the ellipse right on the toilet. But your choice, room style, it doesn't have to always be a living room or a bedroom or whatever. It can be anything you want. So there are ways you can play around with the tile pattern that way. And then that does break up the monotony of the tiles a little bit, which is kind of nice. So now what I like to do in one of these, this one I think. In this one, I had the door here and the window. And then I did the couch and realized I was staring out the window, so I flipped things around a little bit, put the window here, TV on the wall, and then moved the door over. So it's probably not a bad idea to just start right off with your couch or your furniture of some sort. Whatever is gonna be the biggest piece in the room. And I'm gonna back it up to about here. They'll do the, and you gotta be careful how large you make it here. And you'll see why, because in this case, I'm lining right up. I'm gonna draw really dark so it delineates on the bottom there. And to start right away erasing tiles. If you erase too much, you can always go back and put them in later. And again, this is one advantage of doing the tiles last. I'm gonna make this the corner of my couch. You can see I've again gone off the, so I'm gonna put this over here. The only thing about having the extra paper is you gotta make sure you don't move it. So if you are doing it this way, it's probably not a bad idea to tape it down or tape them together briefly, just so you have an idea of where things are going. My couch is gonna be huge. Oh well, we'll see what happens. So here, this just gives me an idea where should go. So now that I know, it'll be okay. Let's just make it here. There's my couch, I don't need that anymore. It is very tall though, I made a very tall couch. So again, think about, and you're gonna work lighter than me for sure, or you should be. So, it's easier to make adjustments. I'm trying to decide now, I think I'm gonna lower that couch a little bit. Let's see what happens if I do this. And keep your eyes open on this. Again, me drawing dark is not helping me at all here. That's better. So I should have started quite a bit lower here. That's way better. Now I've got room to show the arm of the couch and the cushion and all that other crap. Be careful how wide. Try to keep this and this similar. Realistically, this one would be a little bit bigger. So we'll just put a line, and then I'm gonna move forward. And I'm gonna judge how wide that's gonna get. That's too wide. I'm gonna go a little narrower. I'm gonna start there. And then I'm gonna start, what I want this to end up kind of a square. Kind of like when we do the tiles in one point. I want it to look fairly consistent in that corner, which that looks pretty good. Again, you do not have to do the boring IKEA box stuff. You see right away my vertical is off here. I'm going to correct that, which means I'll have to correct everything somewhere down the road, but be aware of that, keep an eye on that. It's easy for your verticals to get off. Just keep checking. Use the edge of your page as your check for your verticals. So that one went off, which is going to make my couch wonky, so I'll take marks off myself for that. Now decide where I want my cushion or the edge of the couch to go. Let's try there. Doing the couch this way is a little less work because it's hiding some of the detail of the couch. And it's like, it's okay to not have an arm on this end. It's up against the wall, so do what you want to do. Now find center here. I'm just going to use what I'm seeing of the cushions, and I'm going to make my mark, and that's where I'll put the split if you want a split. Don't forget about that, using that finding center on certain things. It just, that works pretty good. So it just helps some things make sense. And I'm gonna put a cabinet. I'm gonna do a little cabinet under the TV. Let me do a little cabinet right here. And what I like to do is always do the back, especially with cabinets or shelves, do the back of it where it would be against the wall. So if you can imagine the back piece of the cabinet up against the wall there, and then project out from it, get your top and sides. Draw your projections. Bless you. And then decide how deep you want this cabinet to be. Something like that will work. And then you can drop down. And we now have the box of our cabinet. Again, I know I say it all the time, but please don't draw as dark as I am. It's not your best friend. It's kind of nice to draw more than you need sometimes. Now I'm gonna erase what I don't need. That corner, erase the tiles. And then just quickly redraw what I erased. Excellent. This is where those little pencil size retractable erasers come in handy. If you're working light and have one of those. Now here's another case where I want to know where my center is. Because maybe I want to put doors on this cabinet. Maybe I want one door and shelves, whatever the case may be. I'll decide where I want a shelf. And I could do the same thing if I want this side to be doors. There, I've got it's like an entertainment unit or whatever you want to call it. Not a bad idea to erase that horizon line right away too. Any excess lines you can get rid of as you go. Really good idea to just do it on the fly. So there's that, and then of course everything should have some kind of dimension to it. You can put little handles here. And always go back to your, I didn't do it there, but always line your ruler, when you're inking, line your ruler back up with your vanishing point. Make sure that you're inking a correct line. Sometimes we don't, and we end up inking something and realize later it's like, that was not the right line. So there we go. Little cabinet under there. And now we'll put the TV on the wall. I don't even watch that much TV anymore, but I'm pretty focused on having one of these rooms. It's nice when you have it. And again, show some dimension on the TV. You can just be simple like that. If you want to totally box it in, then make sure that you use your vanishing point here and here to create that edge. And then you can have the door. Oh, that's way too high. Remember to keep your door scale, especially doors, is really noticeable right away. Think about the space that happens above the door inside of the house. It's about like that, it's pretty close. I would definitely not make it that wide. In this case, because we're running off the design, off the page, you can just leave that kind of unfinished. Let it just kind of disappear. And then show your dimension on the inside of the door and just let it be. And maybe doorknob there. You can have a window over here. So you kind of sit on the couch and stare out the window at people, which isn't creepy at all. Go a little lower than the door. Definitely above the couch. So that could be your window. And the same thing, you can do some dimension if you want. See what I did. Find it now. You can put like the side light if you want to divide slide the window up, figure that out. So we've got 2 pieces of furniture, you should have a third, so you could put a table in here, you put a side table here, whatever you want. I'm not gonna do a third piece. I am going to throw the area rug in, just to break up some of those tiles, so I think I'll put it, I'm gonna put it here. I'm just gonna use the tiles. Maybe we'll go right to the wall, and then out a little bit. I'm just gonna use the tiles as my edge. Maybe I'll do it here as well. As long as you leave some tiles showing. So again, if you prefer to not do it the way I do it and just draw your tiles in after, if you can keep that straight, that's more than fine. It is definitely a cleaner way to do it. Now, if you're working light, not like me, this isn't really an issue. But the little rug thing really breaks up that tile monotony, which is nice. Yeah, and that's enough tile. That's good. I would probably not. I'd probably continue this tile. Where did it go? This one. I'd probably continue that one without the big block. It wouldn't make much sense there all by itself. So that's your basic room using 2-point perspective. So I've got 2 pieces of furniture. Remember, I don't include the TV as furniture just because it's on the wall. I don't include the rug either. So you would need at least one more piece of furniture. Oh, it's upside down. Sorry, guys. I don't even have to touch these buttons, and I seem to change them. So you would have at least one more piece of furniture. When you're working on the Cougar paper, you do have more space, so you can probably open up the space a little bit better. And if you want to include a little bit more furniture, you can. You can have something like standing here, like a coat rack or something, or a coat hook, whatever. You could have something maybe here, little things. They don't all have to be big pieces of furniture. But you definitely need a rug, a door, and a window. Fairly simple. Any questions? Cool. So, how did I do on time? Halfway between yesterday morning and afternoon. Not bad. So that's your goal. It's your work period now, so you can work on this. If you're still finishing up the last assignment, you can finish that up and submit it.